Yo, welcome to another episode of the BJJ Goons podcast. I'm one half of the team here, Tim, the Mushmaster Spriggs, and with me as always every week is...
Yo, what's up, everybody? It's Nico Ball. Glad to be back for another episode. And this week we're back with a guest. We actually have another friend of a friend, another homie from New York. We have Eric with us today. What's up?
Good morning. Good morning.
Hey, what's going on, Eric? How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well this morning.
All right, man. Well, Eric Nicholson, you are a jiu-jitsu and judo practitioner. You are a New York City teacher, and you run the Secret Roll Club. We will get into all that a little bit later. But Nico, we got a little bit of a current events thing. We're trying to update all the goons out there. What's going on with us? So, Nico, where are you? This is not your typical background. I don't see the Supreme Clientele poster in the background.
I know, right? I know. Okay, so I've been doing a little bit of traveling this weekend. I don't know if you guys listen to a lot of other podcasts, considering this is the best podcast and the only podcast y'all need to be listening to. But I also like to listen to Horrible Decisions, and more relevant to this is the Flagrant 2 podcast. So I don't know if y'all hip, if y'all saw it on Flow Grappling, but Flagrant 2 went out and found one of the most amazing, the best, the most articulate representative of jiu-jitsu to have on their podcast. So did you check out the episode of Flagrant 2 with Dylan Dennis, Tim?
I did, but I could not get through it.
I couldn't either. So what I had to do is I had to go all the way up to New York to What the Fuck Media Studios. Because if you don't know, like in the podcast industry, there's like a couple producers. One of them being Alex Media. He does a lot of stuff. And he was the one that produced that episode. And he owns a studio up in New York. In Soho. So I had to go up there and I had to look at him in the eyes and I had to be like, what the actual fuck? So that's where I'm not at home right now. I'm making my way back to DC. I had to stop by Atlantic City to visit my dad. So I'm here in Atlantic City, then from Atlantic City going Philly back to DC.
Sheesh, you are on the road. How does it feel to finally leave DC and get out the bubble?
Yo, it was amazing. It was actually amazing. And it's funny, like, because now, like, I went up to New York. I was only there for 2 days because I had an actual consultation meeting. I didn't go up there just to yell at him for having Dylan Dennis on the on the episode. But so it was great. Like, I went up there. I got to see some of my friends. I didn't even get to see Fernando or Pabs or any of them. So it was a really short trip. Got to eat a little bit, see the empty streets of New York. And then checking out the studio was really dope. So, because clearly we've been working on building the studio at Tim's house. I've been doing another studio for High Style and doing a lot of content. So Alex works for this guy named Andrew Schultz, and I don't know if you guys follow like comedy. So he's like a really big comedian from New York, and he came up during quarantine. He had a Netflix special, and I guess he used his Netflix special money and his stimmy money to be like, all right, I'm taking my whole squad down to like Miami. So he moved them all down to Miami too. So like, and Alex didn't tell me he was like starting a studio. So he's got like the studio in New York and their whole squad is down in Miami. They're producing down there. But it was cool to get to go up there and like, I watch it all on social media to see how they've been like running the studio, how they've been booking the time, how they do the packages, and then like going in there and seeing like him talk about how he built it. Cause I guess nobody's come in to like see it yet. Like they do all this stuff on Zoom. So he was just like really passionate about talking about how like he developed things, the way things are set up. And that kind of made me realize like every studio that people build is like very unique and individual to the person, the producer that created it. So that was really dope to actually get to go up there and do that. It was inspiring.
How did it feel to be back in New York for a minute?
I love New York. I love New York vibes. Like it was amazing. You know, like I didn't get to go to the Bronx because I love the Bronx, but you know, I still love New York. I love the people. I just love everything about it, just not for longer than like maybe a weekend or a week. I couldn't live there, but I love New York.
You trying to say? I've been here my whole life.
I'm trying to say it's a lot. It's a lot of walking. It's a lot of walk. My legs hurt so bad.
When I lived in New York, I had the best cardio and I was able to withstand highly cold temperatures better than at any point in my life. You know.
Wait a minute, y'all are just down in DC. It's not that much colder up here in the winter.
Are you sure, man? I lived in Hillside, Queens. I lived in Jamaica, Queens, and when that wind hits you, boy.
Nah, I hear you.
It's the wind tunnel. The wind tunnels are disrespectful, yo. They're disrespectful.
You gotta understand. So I run nonstop throughout the year. So I'm like, all right, it's 20 degrees, the wind chill, it's like 15. All right, I could do it, you know, so you get used to it. It's just what it is.
But when you say wind chill, do you mean like what wind chill is for like a normal person on like maybe a plane? Or do you mean like when the wind comes down and hits those buildings? I'm talking, it cuts in between those buildings. It creates a little tunnel and then it like narrows it down like a knife, like a butterfly knife that will cut through any clothes that you have. So when you say, oh, it's only like 5 degrees colder, I find that hard to believe.
Like I said, I'm different. For running 15 degrees, like when I tell people I'm going out in the morning to run, you know, and they're like, why? And I'm just like, it's lifestyle, you know. As long as it's not to the point where it's just like, you know, frost is on my beard or something like that, I'm good.
That's wild. So have you been able to train at all, or have you just been running and doing other things to stay healthy?
You know, when the pandemic first occurred, of course, like everyone in New York, like training just came to a halt as far as like with BJJ and judo. But like running, because I tell everyone, running, I'm a runner before anything. So that never stopped. That's always there. I wake up in the morning, I brush my teeth, have a cup of coffee, I go run. That's just who I am. So that has never stopped. As far as like with training, you know, it was like sporadic training here and there, part of 2020. And then I would say like in the fall, things started to pick up a little bit, you know, here and there. And when the schools first reopened, I tried to have the program and, you know, that wasn't too successful because things were still out of control. But I would say like around December, that's when I started to pick up training again. So now I'm back into the swing of things and, you know, going to training.
Nice, nice. So where do you train at?
So I trained judo under Gary St. Ledger, Kano Martial Arts, which is a couple blocks away from Marcelo's, a couple blocks away from Enzo. Prior to that, for jiu-jitsu, I used to train out of the Grappling Club, which is based out of Williamsburg. And they actually have a new location down in Flatbush. John Calisteen's actually running that location. And when I first, I was training under founder who actually passed away, who was a good friend of mine, Alex Nico. He was a black belt out of Clockwork under Josh Griffin. Really, really amazing. He's one of those best kept secrets. You know, he's one of those guys in New York City. And I was training under him for a couple of years. And I trained at Marcelo's for like about a year, but I was still always training with Alex. And then when he passed away this past November, it kind of like hit, you know. So I've been more or less really training with Gary a lot. Gary's also, a lot of people don't realize, not only is Gary St. Ledger just a black belt in judo, but he's also a Danaher black belt in jiu-jitsu. So I train with him, and I also train with Alex Eklund, Master Sky. So, you know, I got a good group of people that I'm surrounded around.
Yeah, that was a lot. Like, I'm thinking it's like, it's so different in New York because you have all of like those major schools and like just the fact that you have like Marcelo's and Henzo's and I know of Clockwork, like just all right there, you know, it lends to like a lot of like territory beef, you would think.
Yeah, there are a lot of great academies, you know, but I also, you know, as a teacher, as an educator, I always feel that instruction, learning, what's best conducive for students is really smaller settings. So, you know, training at facilities, you know, academies like Marcelo's or Henzo, it's great. I mean, you get top-notch instruction, but a lot of times when you go into classes, you know, it can be packed. I remember being at Marcelo's just for the drill class, and it would be like 30 people on the mat. And for the instructors to go around and try to hit each group, it didn't always happen. And I know as an educator being in the classroom, my students, you know, they learn better when there's that smaller groupings and where it's more of an intimate situation. And that's what I was used to when I first started training jujitsu. That's how it began. When I first started training judo, smaller academies. And that was one of the reasons why I'd stayed at the grappling club for so long and training with Alex, because it was an intimate setting and it was just more or less like, you know, maybe 10 people in a class. Even 12 people in a class, you know, is I feel that's like the max. You know, I think that's like the cutoff where everyone can actually work together and actually learn and to work with each other as well.
That makes so much sense. That's why I really like Bronx Jiu-Jitsu. It's a small environment. Like even TLI, it's like the way that we break down training, it makes it, even if there's a lot of people there, it's a little bit more intimate and
Right.
and you have that attention from a teacher, because it's very hard. Like I've been to Henzo's and I like before I think like morally I wouldn't ever go back to Henzo. I don't know Henzo gym, but like I go and hang out at Henzo's a lot and like it's a cool vibe. I've done one class there and it was just tons of people there. Like it's not like I got a lot of help in jiu-jitsu. Like Hose was there and I was interviewing him and we were like talking during class, but it was just so much, you know. And I don't like being around a lot of people that I don't know. Like even as a teacher, because I'm also an educator, like the quick way to have me shut down. And like, I hate when we have staff meetings and people are like, well, what are your emotions? Tell us with a color. And it's like, my emotion is like, I hate that. Like, even as an educator, I absolutely positively hate that. Like, I won't speak in a staff meeting unless I'm in like a small group of like 2 or 3 people. If not, especially if it has anything to do with my life, it makes me shut down. Like I shut down and I recognize it. Like, and I think like that's it translates in the school settings, and it definitely translates into like any kind of setting like jiu-jitsu where you're learning. Like Pops right now is out there talking about like, I don't know who Pops trains with, but it sounds like he trains with like all of the racist jiu-jitsu people. And it's like, I was like, why are you posting this? Who's saying that? He's like, cops that train jiu-jitsu. I was like, how do you know cops that train jiu-jitsu? And it's like, when you get in this environment, it's very hard to feel comfortable. Like if you're like in a gym with 30 people and you have those kind of people there and you're just like a white belt, you're never going to say anything. You're never going to tell anybody that you don't feel comfortable. You just kind of perpetuating it, even if you don't really realize that you're doing it, because you don't want to speak up. You don't know that it's not okay. And like, you should have a better environment.
Right. No, I agree 100%. I'm very reserved. And, you know, you mentioned like being in those staff meetings, you know, amongst your colleagues. You know, I'm very quiet in those settings, unless it's something that I really feel passionate about, that I will speak and make a statement. But, you know, when my students, it's a totally different thing. You know, I'm very animated. I'm very much engaged, you know, building that rapport with my students. But, you know, when it comes to like those large situations where a lot of people, I'm just like, nah, I just want to like be off to the side, learn, take whatever notes and, you know, and just soak up whatever information that I need, you know, for myself. So training at those large, you know, academies is great. You get a lot of training partners to go around with. But I feel like often, you know, if you're not one of those people who are into cliques and being cliquish, you know, you just overlook, you know, and it's just like walking into academy, it's just like, all right, saying hello to the instructors and they have no idea who you are. You know, I want to go to an academy where it's like, I have a relationship with not only the people who I train with on the mat, but also my instructors. And that was the type of relationship that I had, you know, at the grappling club. That's the relationship that I have, you know, at Connell with Gary. It's like a family vibe. You know, everyone is looking out for each other and really working with each other. You know, of course, everybody's competitive, you know, when they're training, but at the end of the class, there is that sense of, you know, a family. And I felt welcomed at Marcelo's, but as far as like being a part of that academy, saying like, oh yeah, I didn't get that. And I mean, you know, it's an amazing academy. It's just that for some people, being in those type of academies, that works for me. I'd rather be at a smaller, you know, smaller academy, just in building relationships.
I feel from my personal experience, building personal relationships makes training that much easier. And if you're trying to go to a high level, you're going to need to have that kind of camaraderie with your teammates, because we're traveling across the country together, sometimes internationally together. And you're an educator, so you'll understand this. A big selling point for these private schools is that the class number of students. You know, I went to private schools and growing up, like from middle through high school, and like a big thing was we have less than 20 kids a class, or we have less than 15 in a class. And it's great because when you're learning something, especially if it's difficult, something physical like jujitsu, which is very mentally and physically taxing, it's great that there's a small number of people because you can get a little bit more one-on-one attention, and that can be the whole difference. You know, this is a social sport. A lot of it is kind of what I would compare jujitsu to is like yoga. It's forced yoga, but it's kind of a practice. It's like a spiritual thing, and you want to have a connection with your teammates and your coaches. And one of the issues I see moving forward within the community is that a lot of people are not going to feel comfortable going to these academies after all the nonsense that we've had to deal with this last year, and people putting that out there.
No, I definitely agree, you know, and especially with social media, you have, you know, people making statements like, that's why I love Pabs. Pabs will definitely expose people for who they are. And it's interesting, you know, like you said, Tim, during this last year, because of social media, and the former president who was in office normalized these, just the way it was normalized in the sense of like, this is okay. And a lot of people really showed truly who they are. And I mean, you know, you're putting trust into these people when you're training, and to know that these are the same people who at the same time probably off the street are looking at you at a different way. You know, it's always that brotherhood of yeah brother, yeah brother. And it's like, no, we're truly not brothers if you're actually feeling this way, you know. So again, going back to smaller academies, I'd rather be in that situation where it's more intimate and I truly get to know who I'm training with and who I'm building relationships with.
You are in New York City, and it's one of the meccas of jiu-jitsu. I could argue that New York City is the mecca of American jiu-jitsu, like in 2021 for sure. And there's a lot of academies in there, and you explained that you train and travel to different academies. Is that accepted there? Like, what is the viewpoint of kind of the jujitsu community there? Because there's traditionalists, of course, because it is New York City. It's been there for almost 30 years now. But there's this new school vibe where guys are going to train wherever they can get good work in, or wherever they think they can learn something new. So what is the vibe there? Is it accepted to cross train there?
I feel like, you know, in the last couple of years, it's definitely more acceptable where people are coming in from different academies. You know, training at Kano, there are people coming in to cross train coming from Henzo's. There are people coming in from Marcelo's. There are people coming in, a few guys came in from Unity. So it's interesting to see that, you know, there are, you know, practitioners who want to learn another discipline who are coming from different academies. And I feel like with something like with martial arts, it's something, it's for everyone. I understand having that allegiance to your academy and being, you know, proud to be a part of that academy, but I feel like it shouldn't be you shouldn't be looked down upon if you want to go and train with other people. I just never understood that concept, because I mean, it's like playing ball. Like, you know, you go from park to park playing pickup ball. No one's going to say like, oh, well, you coming from over there, like you can't play with us. I just don't understand where this is something that's for everyone. Why people are looked a certain, like you're viewed a certain way for training with other people. I can understand if there's this, you're a competitor and there's a rival academy and there's actually tensions between the two schools. That I can understand. But if you're the hobbyist, or even that middle ground person where you're like a hobbyist, but you like to compete and you take it very serious, what is the big deal? If you're coming in being respectful and coming to that academy and, like I said, being respectful of your training partners and the instructors, shouldn't be a problem. That's just my opinion.
I agree. I agree. I would love for there to be not so much static between academies in certain places. In Maryland, it used to be way more contentious. I think there's still some old school beefs. I mean, I'm not involved in any. Like we're about to have we're about to commentate this event at another academy in Randori BJJ Invitational. And I love that now at least some academies are cool with us going there and exchanging knowledge and coming together as a community, because I think that as a sport, there's a lot of negativity in the air, just with, like we mentioned earlier, what happened this last year. And like we have this old school mentality. I guess it comes from Brazil, how they used to have blood feuds between affiliations, you know, like they'd literally fight in the streets. And they kind of brought that attitude over here. And I'm like, man, in other sports, like you mentioned hooping, guys will go from different borough to different borough or different neighborhood. Some dudes would go from DC to Baltimore just to get an open run in for the best hoopers. We don't really have that in jiu-jitsu. And it's kind of disappointing, because I would love nothing more for us to treat this like basketball. It would make it way more fun, as opposed to, like, you kind of have to think about, at least from my perspective as a competitor, you got to think some guys, you go to academy, you got a target on your back just because. You know,
I think I've been fortunate, you know, at the time that I came in and started practicing jiu-jitsu, that, you know, I didn't really see that beef where people are like, oh, you're from this academy, you can't roll with you. You know, I've been able to go to a lot of different academies, you know, and train and be welcome. And I feel like, especially now, like the pandemic hit, you know, a lot of the larger academies, and now we're starting to see a lot more. Well, even prior to the pandemic, there were more like smaller academies opening, and they had that open door policy of like, it doesn't matter where you train. Basically, you know, no politics involved. Come in and just train and forge relationships. And New York has so many great small academies that have that mentality of like, just come in and train, and that's it. And I love it, you know, and because as New Yorkers, that's who we are. I feel, you know, we're this cosmopolitan where it's just, you know, people from everywhere, and it's, you see it in dojos, you know, when you go from one academy to the next, and I mean really amongst like the smaller schools.
You are the founder of Secret Roll Club.
Oh no.
Oh, you're not?
No, I'm not the founder. No.
Okay.
That's the problem though. Nobody knows. Like it really is like this secret roll club. We're sitting there like researching it. Like the last picture is of DJ. And then me and Tim are like,
he didn't tell me. I'm one of his best friends. He did not tell me anything about this excursion.
DJ don't tell you when he's going to Brazil. DJ don't tell you when shit's about to pop off at a fight and it's time to get. DJ won't tell you it. But
he won't even tell you that he's moving to Thailand. He won't even tell you has a girlfriend or a fiance or a wife or is about to have a child. You just got to find out through the grapevine.
Because like, I don't know, these secret roll clubs, like, I don't even know. I think it was like Barbin that first told me, and I was like, what is it? And then like, he actually wouldn't tell me. And like, so I was just like, what? And then, you know, because like Pops and Fernando, they've all gone up. I was like, what are y'all doing? Like, and I've actually gone up. I went to the one on, I think it was like Staten Island. It was really far. It's Sucker Free Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh, that was out in Long Island. That was, yeah.
That's also the time that I found out that Long Island is not New York. It shouldn't be called New York. Like, not to a non-New Yorker.
Oh, that's
it's part of New York. It's the suburbs. It's the suburbs of New York City. Same thing like with Westchester County. You know? So.
And you don't know where you're going. Like, it was
Strong
interesting,
Island.
but it was an amazing event, you know, like, so, but like, it was also, it's like trying to, hard to figure out like what y'all were doing, because y'all really do keep it secret. So that's why we had to have you on, so that you could lay it down. So you are not the founder. Like, what is it? How did you come about this idea?
Well, I didn't come, it's a secret.
Who did? Who?
It's Secret Roll began about 5 years ago, and you know, it's funny because a lot of people will come up to me like, "Yo, you do the whole Secret Roll thing," and I'm like, "No, I'm a part of it." You know, I did a lot of the events in terms of like hosting the events and organizing and helping out. The movement started about, I would say, about 5 years ago. And it was a group of us that, or I should say, the original group that started this secret role was basically having sessions at different locations, not so much at dojos, but just a few guys who were rolling with each other from, I don't want to mention the name of the academy because it really started as a result of a bunch of us being at a certain academy that was very strict about cross training and going to other academies and really keeping, you know, their students just at their school. And, you know, like anyone, when you get into something, you just, and especially like with jujitsu, it's just like, I want to train, I want to train, I want to go here, I want to go there. You know, I want to roll with this person. The academy's not open, I got mats, let's roll. And that's what it became. And then eventually it started growing a little bit more where it's like the idea of like, what if this concept of having these secret role meets was at different academies? And the initial academies, actually the grappling club was one of the first events that occurred. I think that was, yeah, it would be 5 years ago in 2016. 2017. I always forget. But anyway, the first couple events were actually more or less like a seminar, because Abraham Marte actually came in. He did 2 sessions. He did the grappling club, and then the following event was at Park Slope BJJ. And, you know, it was great because you had all these different groups of people coming together. And like I said, the original intent was to get people to come to other dojos and because of this policy in New York, this attitude of like, you know, you can't go there, you can't go there, just the whole politics behind jiu-jitsu. And then by the third event that we had, it was starting to pick up. And we had it at the original location, original Master Sky location in Bushwick. And that's where things really started to pop off. And we're like, all right, let's bring in a DJ, you know, create like this whole party vibe.
At each one, did you have like a special guest that was teaching some positions?
No,
I
just
forgot
actually,
that it was like a mini seminar and or like a technique or two, and then rolling. I forgot about that.
Only the first 2 with Abraham Marte, because he did close guard seminar. And like I said, by the time that we did the third one, it was more or less like helping give like new academies exposure. So at the time, Master Sky had just opened, Grappling Club had just opened. So it was actually promoting those schools as well. And it brought people into this no politics, you know, attitude of like just come in and train. So it helped academies like the Grappling Club, Master Sky, bringing clientele basically. And, you know, by the time that 2017 rolled around, yeah, because the original ones were definitely 2016. So around beginning of 2017, we started changing up the format. We're like, why don't we just have like these speakeasy, you know, open mat parties, and we just go from academy to academy, and people start hitting us up. You know, we established the Instagram page, a website, and you know, we were going from school to school and just bringing in people and just that good vibe of just having a party. And you know, a DJ. We had live bands. We had giveaways like VHTS was they came in one session. They set up like a little booth, so their gis. Super RA gave us like T-shirts and stickers, and like we would have raffles, giveaways. It was great, you know. And we did one session. I remember we did one event at Church Street Boxing, and I mean, it was amazing. It was like 90, literally like 90 people on the mat just rolling, and just the DJ just blasting music and just giving away gis and T-shirts. And it was just a great way to connect with the New York City jiu-jitsu community. And that's how I got to know a lot of great people in jiu-jitsu and from these events. You know, we did events in New Jersey, we did Philadelphia, the original Logic location when it was Roots. We did, I think we were down there twice. There was a session, we did one event in Arizona. I didn't go out to that one, but So we were trying to create like this network of schools that would like kind of like work with each other and help promote each other as we, we're just bringing in people together and just create like this, I don't know, this community of just like people who just wanted to grapple and just have fun.
How do you spread the word about this secret roll club if it's a secret?
Word of mouth, 'cause
Social media.
that's how I found out, and then they wouldn't tell me. Now I forgot about this too, because but I don't know if you know Barban, but Barban is very much so like that. Like he was in Virginia, like hunting the other, like last week. I was like, "You hunt? You're from New York? Like, what are you talking about?" But yeah, I just because he had like I think he had like a shirt. I don't know, but he's like, "Yeah, it's just a secret," and he was doing real good. That was a great promotion, man. That was a great promotion.
Yeah, we use social media to its advantage and just basically created the Instagram, and we would announce that an event was coming up and send like a link, to purchase like a ticket. We were able to have events. We had a really big event at Fabio Clemente's, and we actually had different instructors come in. So from each event they change. Sometimes we would have people come in, teach a technique. I remember we were out in New Jersey at Subforce, and the instructors, they actually brought in their students. People were coming in from the city, went out there. The instructors gave, taught a couple techniques. So it would vary from place to place. Lotus, the same thing. I did an event to help support Fernando's jiu-jitsu program that he had up in the Bronx with the kids.
Okay.
We did some fundraising. All the proceeds went to to buy new gis and mats for his program. So it varied. It was nothing. It wasn't about, oh yeah, we're trying to make money. It was really just giving back to the community.
Go ahead, Nico.
Did you ever have any issues with it? Did these people from these strict gyms eventually find out, or were like, yeah, let us get a good story? That was a yes. That was reminiscing on, so let's get a good story.
Yeah.
Yes, it actually happened from my academy. Like I said, I don't want to mention the names, but the academy that I was training at the time, like I said, the instructors were very, very adamant about their students not going to other academies and training. So, secret roll was a secret, but it wasn't a secret because it was out there, and we're all in the pictures and stuff and promoting it. So one day it was, I think it was a promotion night at the gym, and I went. Cool. And after the promotion, I'll never forget, during the promotion, my instructor came up to me. He was like, "You gonna stick around afterwards?" I was like, "Sure," and because he wanted to talk, about the whole secret roll thing, and this is a very well-known person, and it was funny because he was like, "Hey, I see that you've been doing these things with secret roll, and what is it?" And I was like, "It's a secret," and he was just like, "Okay." And then next thing I know, it turned into like an hour and a half, and he's just talking to me about jiu-jitsu in terms of like the school and the policy. And at that time, I had already made up in my mind, like I was leaving the academy. I was actually training there, and I was training with Alex at the grappling club. So I was already making my my exit out of there. So I left and I never looked back, but it was just interesting to see that, people, or I should say people were concerned that we were trying to compete with them, with the whole secret roll thing, that we were trying to create like a dojo ourselves. But it was just more or less like a movement, if anything, just to spread jiu-jitsu throughout New York or wherever, and just bring people together. Nothing more than that.
That's amazing, but definitely it's not surprising, but I can only imagine how awkward it would be for an hour and a half. That's a really long
That's
time.
crazy.
That's
I might be exaggerating, but it was definitely an hour, and I was just like, "Oh wow, dude is really, really talking to me about this like he's my pops."
Oh
like,
yeah.
You
and they
shouldn't
get
be going here. I'm
serious.
like, I'm a grown man. Like, I'm paying you. So you know, my monthly fees are going in your pocket. So don't be concerned. And I told them, I said straight up, I said, look, when I come in here, you know, I toned it down. I'm respectful. I come in here as a student to learn. And I didn't think that, you know, I was doing anything that was being disrespectful to the academy. I just like to train. I love jujitsu, you know, and that was it. But I left, you know, I left the academy on good terms in terms of, you know, having a rapport with them still. And every school, I understand, every school has their own um, way of teaching and how they want their academy to be. And you know, every school has their way of how they practice, and there's a school for everyone. You know, and with Secret Role, it was just like, well, we just want to make jujitsu for everyone, and bringing you to this academy, bringing you to this academy, and so you can meet this person. I mean, and that's all it was.
It's very interesting you said that whole, he was talking to you like he's your pops. That's always crazy to me about jujitsu, how a lot of the academy owners or high-level black belts take themselves super seriously.
Yeah.
And they've been able to live in this bubble for so long where they're looked at as a god. But there's a real world out there. And at the end of the day, like, we pay.
Right.
We pay.
Right.
There's been situations I've been in where when I started at 16, my parents were like, all right, you're just going to be a lifetime member. So like I paid, like I'm paid up, right? And like they still try to treat you like just because you are my instructor, that you're like Master Splinter or something, like you're my daddy. You know, it's just very strange. And there've been situations where they try to get in the guy's personal life, like he's on the team, he shouldn't be doing this or he shouldn't be doing that. And that's always bugged me.
Right.
Besides that, are there anything else with the jiu-jitsu culture that you would like to see change?
I would definitely like to see a representation of Black and Latinos in jiu-jitsu. And that's one of the reasons why I started my program at my school, because, you know, we're underrepresented in jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, yourself and a lot of other high-level jiu-jitsu practitioners are not given the same platform as, you know, people who have the same accolades. And I feel like with jujitsu, or just the way that schools are structured in terms of what we offer students, if there's an after school program that involves sports, it's always, and especially, you know, here in New York City, it's basketball. I love ball. Ball's great. I've never been a baller, you know what I'm saying, but I will watch basketball. I've always gravitated different, especially where we weren't represented. I wrestled as a kid. I played soccer. Those were things that I was drawn to. And, you know, after a couple of years of training jiu-jitsu and really understanding the history and understanding, you know, who we are, and I started in running. Like I've been a runner for about 20 years, 21 years. And, you know, I actively, you know, do races. And I would show up at races and I would just look around, you know, and you see the one brother or the one sister giving the head nod, because it's so few of us there, you know, and even that has changed. It's definitely, you know, I've seen the change in New York rural runners, where there's definitely a lot more, the diversity has grown. And not just in terms of just, you know, by color, but by, you know, just the diversity in all spectrum. And I want to see that happen with jujitsu. I want to see that happen just in martial arts in general, but specifically here, you know, with jujitsu, because that is, I feel that is like the martial art that everyone knows now. You know, like if you go back like in the 70s and 80s, it's Shotokan karate. You know, there's a Shotokan academy everywhere. You know, and that's where jujitsu is. And I want to see more of us. You know, I want kids to see, you know, people like you or Bones, you know, or DJ or Jamal Hill. I just want to see us represented in the same sport with the same accolades and given that same time. That this is not a sport that is just confined to one group of people.
It's interesting that you said that. I agree totally with you. And it's ironic that we started today talking about that Flagrant 2 interview with Dylan Dennis, and they start the podcast, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, Nico, saying that he's the best grappler in MMA ever. And it's so crazy to me because I don't know how. Go ahead.
How
I'm
many
sorry.
MMA fights has he had?
How many MMA? 2, and his combined record of his opponents are a losing record. And when I challenged him to a fight, he had to get his manager to kind of call the dogs off. They're
Did
like,
he
he
ask,
doesn't want the
like, I
beef.
thought he like there was no response to that because that's what I was
Oh
mentioning.
no,
I
there
was
was a
like,
response.
uh.
There was a response. Like his manager, like, yeah, they don't want the smoke. And besides that, take me out of it. He's not the best grappler in MMA, and he was never the best grappler in grappling. He's had great accolades, but he's never won anything major at black belt. I vividly remember me and Herber Santos mollywhopping him and his boys back in the day. And then it's all because it's the clout era and everything. It's a clout era. And it's so upsetting to me because you're right, Eric. There are people of color, not even American Black people, not just women, but even Brazilians
Right.
that have better credentials than him, that are doing the things that he's done way better, and they're not getting the attention. But if someone of color were to do these things, one, they wouldn't get the shine. Two, they'd be vilified and they wouldn't be on one of the biggest podcasts on the planet.
Right.
So, the representation is important. Besides what you do with your academy, how do you think that we can increase the attention that people of color do? Like, what do you see is the best plan of action for us to do that, to try to even the playing field?
I think one, I don't think there's any definitive direct answer for
Mhm.
that, but I think there are things that we can do to support each other, like this podcast. And by bringing on people who have those accolades and exposing them, or I should say exposing your listeners to these people and bringing them to the light. I think it's important for us to have this network with each other in that way so we can support each other. I would definitely love to have you come through to the school. I would definitely, even if it's a matter of just having a Zoom call and you can speak to the kids about jujitsu and what it's done for you. And that was one of the things that I've done with the program that I started at my school, is to expose them to something that it's not often out there for us to know about. Came across like anybody else in jujitsu. You've heard of it, you've seen it in MMA and stuff. But it got to a point for me where I've always been active and I needed something else aside from running, and I wanted a new challenge. And there was an academy and I just signed up and I've never looked back. And as I got more into jujitsu and learning more about it, I wanted to use this or use what I've been learning and teach my students. Students are always coming in. I know more about my students than they know about me, other than just being in the classroom. So this was an opportunity for me to, show them this is who I am. This is something that I do outside of school. And, to answer your question, like I said, I think it's really building a network amongst each other and supporting each other on platforms like, your podcast, or even the programs that I've started. And there are other programs like this, and just really making it so that we are represented. That's just one idea that I have.
That's amazing.
I think that's very, very important. Like, because there's lots of people complain about the lack of representation, but then there's also a lack of actual media or efforts to share different narratives. Like,
Right.
how many other podcasts of people of color or just other podcasts that actually have the quality and the reach to really, reach a greater audience? Like, there's a lot of them, but either not good at marketing, or they don't have the content, they don't have the quality. So there's like a lot of other people out there, but it really does take, you know, coming together and helping support and promote other people to really change things.
Right. I would love to see, you know, Black and Latino grapplers like on podcasts like Telex, you know, it's where it's not just limited to just interviewing celebrities and musicians, because we do more than just, you know, entertain. You know, they, you know, and even in terms of athletes, you know, we're just not limited to football. We're not limited to basketball. This sport, I think, should, you know, or I should say, for what I've seen, what it's done for my students in the after school program, it's really changed a lot of those kids in terms of just the confidence and building that that rapport with each other. And I think something like this is very important for kids to have. But also in America, that's not part of our culture. You know, like when you go to Japan, you know, judo is part of the school curriculum. That is part of the culture. In America, I just feel like we don't have that. And when we promote sports, it's the big three, you know, and the alternative sports are sports that, you know, children, students don't necessarily gravitate to. Again, you know, we're not represented. So I want to change that. I want to change it where, you know, kids are like, oh, I do jujitsu, you know, and or I do judo. I do, or I play lacrosse, you know, or I play soccer. You know, my daughter, you know, she's playing lacrosse, and when she told me that she was going to play lacrosse, I was just like, oh, okay, that's what's up. You know, just not confining ourselves and, you know, being barricaded by these limits. So I just want to see kids be able to, you know, go beyond those boundaries of just those particular sports, and also in other areas too. So
It's very true. That's very true.
Anything else, Nico?
No, not really. That's just a lot to think about. Like, it's amazing. We kind of glossed over the fact that you're
Yeah.
in schools as well, but like kind of running out of time. We've talked to a couple people like Project Grapple, that kind of works in Florida schools, Dom Hoskins out in California. And it's really like a struggle. Like, you know, so anybody that's listening to this and is like trying to do some kind of social work in the education system, I mean, I'm pretty sure if you reach out to Eric, if you can find him on social media, or Secret Role Club, or someone you know that's doing it, they could definitely give you advice, because it is not easy to do. I don't think, like with the
no,
school
it's definitely
requirements and
not.
jumping through hoops, like you really need to have an educator that knows how to get into schools. I feel if you're trying to put jujitsu into schools, because we do have a lot of requirements, and, you know, working with kids and like being able to get into the building, and it's hard, but it's work that needs to be done in programs that need to exist, because schools are cutting all of the funding to anything that's not STEM, you know.
And it's funny that you said STEM, because my school is actually a STEM school. We're an engineering school. And one of the things that we're actually implementing in the program is STEM. One of my colleagues who's actually in the program, he started jujitsu in the program. And then a couple months later, he signed up, like he trains on a regular basis. But he's also our engineering teacher. And we're actually implementing STEM into the program because we have a dedicated space at my school that my principal actually really, she's so behind the project and the program. And we were bouncing from room to room in the school, and to the point where my principal was like, no, I want you to take this room, you do whatever. So the kids come in and they have owned that space. So we're in the process of actually using the programs in AutoCAD to actually design the room. So the students are actually designing the room and using what they're learning in class to create a dojo space. They're building the platform, the cubicle, or I should say the cubbies, to put their shoes and their clothes, benches. It's amazing what they're doing. And hopefully we can continue the project over the summer, given the current situation with, you know, like in terms of budget, but I'm hoping that I can extend the program throughout the summer going into next year. COVID really kind of like put everybody, in a place where it's just like, are we going to be able to continue this? So I can only imagine like how academies, people who depend on their academy for a livelihood. But it was a setback. But we just started maybe about 3 weeks ago. So it's grown. It's happening.
That's amazing. And to do all of that with the pandemic, because I'm not going to my school. Like we're not back in there. So, like to really be doing all that. And I know it's like a lot of mental strain of like being in these physical spaces with kids with the pandemic on top of having to fight for the program, to have to deal with the things with COVID and still trying to bring everything together. That's really amazing.
Yeah, it's hard. The constraints are there. I'm really following the CDC guidelines, like in terms of like when the kids come in and making sure taking their like I have a log. Like the kids come in, they sign in. I got to take their temperature. They write it down. Making sure that they have the proper mask. Making sure that the classes are small enough where there's that social distancing. And I mean, it is a contact sport, so there's going to be some type of contact. And these are kids too. So it's like, they're coming on the train. I'm in Brooklyn. My kids are on the train, bunched up together. So, the whole social distancing in New York City is kind of like, it's kind of pointless because it's a city of 8 million plus, But I'm doing my best to follow those guidelines and ensure the safety for the students as well as staff, because I do have a couple staff members who are part of the program, and also my guests who come in. That was one of the things that I was fortunate of being able to create this program, and because of Secret Role and having the connections to so many different people, and people just hitting me up. I post a picture, like I don't have like an Instagram for the program. I don't post a lot on Instagram. I'm low key, like I do like to post the pictures of my kids. I'm proud of that. And people who I know in the community, they'll hit me up like, yo, can I come through? And that's what really made the program very successful when I first began in 2019, was that I had people from the community coming in to teach and work with the students. I mean, all the gis were donated from people from all over. I just received like 2 boxes a couple of weeks ago from Inverted Gear. And Nelson I've been going back and forth with him for a while. He was like, I got a bunch of gis and some white belts I can give you. And I got home one day and here are these boxes of gis, so I've been very fortunate and blessed to have this network of people and people who genuinely want to come out and just help and work with the kids.
That's amazing.
That's beautiful. Well, Eric, I just want to say thank you for coming on to the BJJ Goons podcast. We really appreciate what you're doing in the community.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We appreciate your insights. Before we wrap, is there anything you'd like to plug? Anything you want to shout out? Anyone you want to shout out?
Oh, I just want to shout to both of you for having me as a guest on the podcast. And I will definitely, make sure that everybody tune in and listen to the podcast. And everyone that has come in and helped and offered, in the past, recently, with the program, I just want to shout those people out. I definitely got to shout my boy Fernando, because it was Fernando who actually really put like the battery in my back to get this whole thing started, because Fernando's like one of the first people who I know who actually, he's an educator as well, who actually started the program, a jiu-jitsu after school program. And it was about 2 years ago where he connected me with one of his students who happens to be a principal a couple blocks away from where I'm teaching, that got me involved in working with kids. And from there, my principal found out, he was like, how are you at another school doing a program and we don't have one here? And it was one of those situations. And
hey, you're highly coveted then, and that's amazing. That's amazing. That's really great.
Yeah, so I have to really thank him and, of course, my instructors, because they really supported me in terms of saying that, no, you can definitely do it, because one, you're a teacher, you know how to work with children, and you train. And, it's not like you're just coming in and train, like you really take this serious and, you can do this. So I gotta definitely thank them. That's it.
That's what's up. Nico, anything?
Nothing new here. Just make sure to follow me on No New Nico on the Instagram. Stop by favelajujitsu.com. Hoodies are finally back in stock and taking up all of the space in my living room. So go cop some. We also have joggers and t-shirts. And yes, I will be getting tank tops because it's getting warm. So we'll have those coming soon.
Oh, and I would definitely have either t-shirts or sweatshirts coming for both. Well, we're in the process of actually redesigning the logo. So as soon as that's finished, I got you both.
Awesome.
Oh, thank you.
That's what's up.
All right, you guys, make sure you go to the BJJ Goons Patreon. It's at patreon.com/BJJ Goons. We drop new content the 1st and the 15th of every month. Make sure you get on one of those tiers. We got the little homie, the big homie, and the certified goons tier. You can also catch me at Tim Spriggs BJJ on Instagram or Facebook. Guys, thanks for watching another episode of the BJJ Goons podcast. On behalf of Eric, on behalf of Nico, on behalf of myself, this has been the BJJ Goons podcast. Peace.
Peace.